Okay, so then when we are looking at this rule of jungle in many ways that we are, perhaps the threat is it's going to be law of the jungle era in the Americas and perhaps more chaotic. Dr. Bremmer, Donald Trump, the US president, has publicly said that the United States will run Venezuela, and he has hinted at taking the oil. What blowback do you expect for US legitimacy and the United States business over the next decades?
Well, Trump says a lot of things. He said he was going to end the war between Russia and Ukraine in 24 hours. Now, he didn't say 24 consecutive hours, but still, that didn't happen that way. He said that the U.S. is going to run Venezuela. He doesn't mean that. There is no plan to send Marco Rubio to be the viceroy or proconsul. Tony Blair is not waiting in the wings. It's not regime change. I call it regime roulette. You spin the wheel and you see what the next regime is because it looks a lot like the old regime. Maduro is gone, but everybody else is still there. When Trump says that the U.S. is going to run Venezuela, and that statement was quite surprising to Marco Rubio, it was very evident. What he really meant is that the United States has shown through its military force and willingness to use it, that the next government in Venezuela, whoever they are going to have to play by the American demands or else. And those demands include cutting ties with the Russians, the Iranians, Hezbollah, providing preferred access to oil and critical minerals deposits for American and allied corporations, accepting illegal immigrants from Venezuela back into the country, shutting down drug production. It does not necessarily include democratic elections, which Trump does not care about, but which Marco Rubio and many MAGA supporters, especially U.S. citizens that are Venezuelans in exile, are very, very interested in that. And so the question is, is this new Venezuelan government, which is the same as the old Venezuelan government mostly, are they now going to listen to Trump? And the answer is nobody knows. I mean, there's no pre-existing relationship between the Trump administration and Delcy Rodriguez.
That's right.
So they don't know. They assume, and there's good reason for them to assume that there will be a level of cooperation, at least in the near term, because the power asymmetries are great, and the Americans will maintain all of that military equipment right off the coast. And there is a willingness in the Trump administration that if they start to see that the government isn't doing what they want, they've talked internally about seizing oil drilling offshore facilities, for example, which would be fairly easy to do militarily, and there wouldn't be much risk around it. So there are other things like that that they could do. But this is still very much a belief without a plan.
Okay.
And oil, you know that the Venezuelans are only producing about 800,000 barrels a day right now. That used to be 3 million barrels. But in order to increase that, you need political stability. And you need an economic environment that oil companies are going to believe in. You need a belief that those oil barrels will be profitable, and energy prices are pretty low right now. You also need a belief that the political system that Trump is supporting will continue to exist when Trump is no longer president in 2029. And, oil companies have a much longer investment cycle than American presidents have expectancy in office. And that's the big problem here is, in the same way that when Trump came into office, he could rip up a lot of what Biden did. Well, the next president can rip up a lot of what Trump does. And so this isn't Xi Jinping. It's not even Modi, who has now run the country for over 10 years in India and has very strong popularity in a democracy. This is Trump, who's quite unpopular, who's 80 years old, and is going to be out in 3 years. And so I think that the projections that the Americans are going to take the oil are exaggerated. I think that I wouldn't go too far with that. I wouldn't run to the bank with promises of that oil.
Okay,